Ready with that?
Okay. All right, we're going to call this meeting to order, December 5th, 2023. Roll call, please.
Councilman Oh,
Meeting to order, December 5th,
forgive me.
2023.
Yep,
Roll call, please.
I'm gonna mute it.
Technical difficulties.
Council Martin?
Here.
Councilor Newstead?
Here.
Councilor Whitney?
Here.
Councilor Stanford? Here. Councilor Wilson? There.
Here. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mayor, if I may announce this real quickly, in case everyone's wondering about the technological, we, in years past, had a YouTube station that we could stream live our meetings on. And tonight, we're testing that out again for the first time in several years. So that was the 20-second delay you heard now that we have that muted. But people can now hopefully watch us live on YouTube channel, and it will have more access for the community to see.
Cool. All right, I want to thank the public that showed up, showing up. This is information gathering tonight. We're just gonna listen to Mike Hussey, who's the fire chief for District 3. He's gonna do give us a Q&A, I guess. And that is I want that solely to be ran by our new city manager, which is Liz Norman. Should be narrating that for us. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to her.
Well, I would like to start with Chief Hussey and Fire District 3 doing our presentation. And then we have some questions the council has prepared that I'll ask on their behalf.
Absolutely, and former fires, their division chief fires, get a handout and review with each member of the public. Really, I'm gonna step back just a little bit. It's an honor to be here to really talk about services Fire District 3 provides to this community. Said my name is Mike Hussey. Privilege to share with the fire chief. I've been serving this organization since 1991, so I've seen a lot of change with Fire District 3 over the time. Fire District 3 is a special district. We're very similar to a library district. We represent a quality of life decision for communities. We encompass 171 square miles and 58,000 residents, permanent residents service. We have a special hazard in White City area that swells during the day. That's the industrial park. And we see a couple of 2,000 additional people come in as we work. We've been going through a strategic planning session and we verified our vision. It's why we exist, to reduce and eliminate risk from fire, rescue, and medical events in the communities we serve. And the mission of Jackson County Fire District 3 is to preserve the quality of life and protect property through education, risk reduction, and emergency response services. And those are listed in that order purposefully. We truly believe building resilience in the community, building a network of support is in everyone's best interest. If we can reduce our reliance on the 911 system and response, we have a healthier, more vibrant, more attractive community. The district operates for 4 career and 4 volunteer stations. We have a regional training center in White City where we host the State Department of Public Safety Standards and Training. We have law enforcement training there. It's also the host of the Little Community College Fire Science program. We have a risk reduction program. That's where a lot of our fuels mitigation, our occupancy inspections, the code enforcement and investigation bureaus live. And we have a community care program that's unique to Fire District 3. That's unlike so many of the other programs that are out there. And I'll speak to it in just a minute. The district's on target to exceed 9,000 calls per service this year. And we operate with a staff of 73 full-time employees and 18 community volunteers and students. The Gold Hill Fire Station, it was constructed back in 1999 on access road. Now it's property that the district owned, and through partnership with the church that was across the street, or what we call, we received water from their well. We were standing IGA. We don't have water service to that location. It's currently equipped with the 2003 Pierce Type 1 structural engine. Those are the larger engines that we see in the cities, and a 1997 Ford Type 6 model. We'll be taking delivery of another engine in the spring and moving 2020 or 2020 Type 3 interface engine out to the field. Since construction, the station has been staffed with all volunteers. We've had resident volunteers and a combination of student resident volunteers out of that location. We do not have a resident volunteer living in that station right now. The last one was moved out in mid-October. Many of you got to know Jordan Bates over the time, where he was very instrumental in a lot of the activities and response in the community. What happens with so many of our student interns is they achieve their goal, they get a career job, and they move on, and then we plug more students back in. Like I said, our last resident just moved out mid-October. We're diligently recruiting more. We have an ongoing agreement with Oregon Department of Forestry in all our locations. So come summertime, you'll see additional vehicles that move up in stage, maybe from Grants Pass unit, with net unit to Gold Hill. And we have a unit at Dodge Bridge in Sam's Valley. It really builds a lot more capacity in our region. In the summer, when the wildfire threat goes up, we staff an additional resource that's just on patrol out in the Sam's Valley. Once fire season ends, that goes back to the staff. For the city of Gold Hill, our experience, we average 210 calls for service within the city limits. And within your packet, there's a chart, and it's not a discrepancy. We'll point out on page 4, you'll have a chart that looks like this. This is one when Bill Landis had reached out and I gathered some data today at the beginning of November. So this depicts the experience January 1. 184 call types, or 184 calls within city limits, 2 fires, and it breaks it out. To date, as of yesterday afternoon, we've seen 206 calls. We're averaging 0.6 incidents. That's both emergent or non-emergent, and we're seeing about 66% of all our 911 calls are non-emergent. That's a classification. So 0.6 calls per day, 66% of those calls are non-emergent. Gold Hill remains relatively consistent: 228 and 22, 199 and 21, and 192. The Gold Hill Fire Management Zone, that's a map that's in the back of your packet. It references the larger response area and the data sets for our volunteer career stations. So the fire management zone continues down 234, about Sam's Creek, and it goes down to Blackwell Hill, across Blackwell, over to Old Stage, right near Starlight. See Old Stage.
So that purple area there, so.
Correct, it would be represented by the purple area. Insurance Service Office, there's a rating schedule, and the city of Gold Hill is part of a larger schedule for Fire District 3. Our district, short of a couple addresses, are rated as a 3 in its entirety. Those locations that are greater than 8 miles driving distance from the station, those exist up on Bragg Lake. Not, they have a different rating, but as an entirety, Fire District 3 is together as a 3. It should correlate to reduce injuries. Risk reduction staff. We have a chief officer, 3 deputy fire marshals, wildfire captain. The city of Gold Hill has 67 inspectable occupancy addresses, 81 separate inspectable buildings. We have a cycle of 1, 2, 3 years. And over the 3-year period, we've conducted 182 occupancy inspections near businesses. Fuels reduction program is also instrumental in building resilience, and there's a lot of good grant work that's been done. Our trailer program, our chipper program has been ever present in the community and Canyon Gold Hill has been really strong in helping get some of the flammable vegetation just clean out, connected with the community. Our community care program, oftentimes the fire engine isn't the right solution. We just need to send people to help. And we have a community care program that will take referrals from the engine company, or we run a high utilizer report twice weekly. And when there's addresses or really a spike in request for service, our community care program reaches out and tries to understand what caused the spike. And oftentimes, we just need to connect the individuals with the appropriate services. Maybe they're navigating the healthcare system. Maybe family needs to be engaged just a little bit more. Maybe they just don't understand the medications or the ailment has increased in severity. So that community care program comes out and tries to connect the individuals to the appropriate level of service, so it doesn't place a 911 or a 911 call system. Our response standards are a function of our 2017 standards of cover. We have 4 zonal criteria. The city of Gold Hill is a suburban density 2, representing a population density of 500 to 1,000 people per square mile. The baseline goal is 13 minutes or less, 80% of the time for code 3 responses. 14 minutes or less, 90% of the time for code 3 responses. And I acknowledge that we are falling short of our goal. We're just seeing 14 to 51 for 90% of our code 3 responses. Ambulance services, we don't provide the ambulance service. The Mercy Place provides the ambulance service. We don't have any oversight on the standards for ambulances in the community. That's a function of the Jackson County Commissioners and our ordinance resolution. Gold Hill is considered semi-rural with an ambulance response time standard of 20 minutes by their ordinance. In closing, the strategic planning is ongoing right now, and we recognize the ongoing commitment in the use of volunteers volunteers and resident students is a strategic and wise use. Our workforce is developing the future workforce, but it's also the most cost-efficient way to provide service out to some of these locations. We are meeting with RCC January 4th to reimagine what the second year and third year student programs for student firefighters look like. COVID really hurt the fire service, and RCC has been unable to kick out the number of recruits. This fall academy was the first one that was fully staffed. Going into the spring, it will be the first spring academy in 4 years. So we've only been kicking out, as a region, about 20 certified firefighters. A lot of our kids. So we're meeting on January 4th to talk to RCC about reinvigorating that second year program and how we develop more capacity. If you know people want to jump in emergency services, we have a workforce issue like many others. It's a good opportunity to start that career.
Excuse me, Chief, what's the age limit on that?
The age limit, there is no cap. There's a minimum of 18. But there is a performance standard. So we have physicals that have to fit for duty physicals that have to be. Forget about it.
I was gonna say, no,
I don't know, I'm worried to pass everything last time.
Yeah.
It's doable.
Additionally, throughout your packet, you'll see some references to data. I hope that you get a chance to maybe through some of the Q&A that we dive a little bit deeper into through experience in Gold Hill FMZ. One of the big components is a statistical element that we're trying to understand, and you'll see this represented in experience with 22 and 23, is what makes up that other bulk of calls that's not emergent. The emergent is based on the call that we arrive and there's an action that is emergent. But take a look at those 2 fires. We had 2 fires in Brazil. One was a railroad tie fire down behind the industrial site, and another one was a park desk fire here in town. One or 2 fires. So much of our call volume for the Gold Hill FMC is generated on I-5. And it would be cell phone callers, it would be the person sleeping on the wheel, and it'll get some selection. So we generate a whole lot, and that's what the good intents are. 46% of calls are dispatched and unfound. Get right on the end of the
Yeah. Is it time to?
I defer to this, literally, but I'm.
Let's have you finish your presentation.
Perfect. So, walking through 2022, again, about 46% of calls, wrong location, no emergency found, 39% of dispatch canceling allowed. Our service calls, public service assistance, a lot of those are ground level falls and don't require medical treatment and assist someone back to their care, back to their bed. Unauthorized burning, 18 calls in 2022 for unauthorized burning. That's within the fire management zone, not legal problem. If we look to the experience this year, we're seeing a little bit of an uptick in the calls that were dispatched to, but we're finding nothing in the area on Bible. Wrong location, no emergency found. Public assistance, again, 44 times we came out and just rendered assistance. In the map and then the strategic plan, the last one is what was recently adopted. So included it so what our roadmap and guiding principles are as we develop our objectives and goals in the next 4 years.
If it's okay with the mayor and council, I can ask the questions that are prepared, and then if that doesn't hit all the questions that, if there's others, we can go from there. Does that sound appropriate?
Sounds good.
Chief, and I apologize if any of these are redundant to your report. That's not the intent. Do you know, what is the taxing district rate that our citizens of Woodville are paying?
$311 per thousand.
And does Fire District 3 know what the annual amount collected approximately, at least, from the citizens of Woodville for that protection?
$316,405.
City limits, oh, is that right?
So the city of Gold Hill within the city limits is correct. You have seen a little bit of an increase, but based on this year's tax revenue, and the 170% increase, 316,405 is what we received.
Can you speak to why the Gold Hill Station on Annex Road was built in 1999?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back. In 1999, I was a firefighter on an engine in White City, so I'm gonna reflect on why we chose that location. And a lot of it was out of convenience. We owned the property at that time. The station right down here, the apparatus that we were bringing to serve the community didn't fit within the station, and it was identified that that station was not going to be suitable, just the size of standards and response considerations. So we built the new facility out on Access Road.
Was it staffed with firefighters when first opened?
So we've never had any career firefighters, meaning salaried positions, assigned to that location. We've always had student positions there through RCC or resident volunteers and volunteers. When we annexed the city of Gold Hill, all the volunteers came on board, and most of them just aged out of the role of volunteer firefighter. We still have some volunteers that live within the fire management zone that can respond into the station. Primary staffing model for it has been the use of students and resident volunteers.
So up to 2017, when there were 3 firefighters there, am I understanding you're saying that those were volunteer or student firefighters only?
Correct. And the use of advanced firefighter insurance, so it takes about 1 year to get the firefighter up to a level where they can respond on their own. Say, not just firefighter skills, but if they go out on EMS calls, they need to be an EMT. They need to be able to drive and operate the apparatus safely. They need to have some incident management skill. So that second year college student is the most ideal target to place it in that environment. And it's correct. We've been using second and third year students, our second and third year students to graduate onto the application.
So if I hear you, one of the next questions, I think you just answered that it wasn't a distinct decision to not staff the station for emergency response. It was that those that were there aged out,
So
or was there a decision to not staff it?
there hasn't been a decision not to place volunteers and students in that station. We have run into challenges in recruiting adequate volunteers and students. And on the heels of COVID and the small numbers coming out of the RCC program, we just can't get them trained into that role quickly enough. We're starting a little bit of a rabbit trail. When I was testing, we were seeing 200, 250 applicants. We saw 41 applicants for 4 positions. The city of Bend just saw 37 applicants for firefighter. There's just not a lot of trained workforce to go into that. And we're relying on that academic, the student and volunteer to come into the program.
What is the current response time from Fire District 3 for Gold Hill residents? I know I thought I saw an average for emergency was
1451.
but 66% of the calls is non-emergent. So is there a different response time for each?
No, that 1451 depicted in here was with all the calls for that area.
And how does that compare to what the response times were prior to 2017 when the station was staffed?
I'd have to go back and look at that. I do have a document that references 1330 at the time, but I don't know what call volume that was. I really don't know what data set produced that. So what time prior to 2017?
Yeah, 2017, through 2017, we understand that there were at least 3 people at the station, assigned to the station. And so since 2017, we haven't had those 3 stationed there.
Yeah.
And I've heard you reference volunteer station. My personal experience as a follow-up on other stations is that when volunteers respond to the station, grab a truck and go. Is that process happening, or is the station just not being used?
So the volunteer is the term applied to non-compensated responders. So it could be a community volunteer, it could be the individual, and that's a part of that response time or reflex time that we try to take into consideration. When the tones go out or the resources are dispatched and the community volunteer responds and drives to the station, they get on the vehicle and have an effective response force, how much time does that take? The 3 advanced interns that's referenced, we operate on the 3 shift schedule, A shift, B shift, C shift, and that each one had an individual assigned to it. So it's not representing 3 per day every day. It's 3 advanced interns that were assigned 1 per shift. And then all the volunteers were encouraged to go out and
Still have about half a page left for you here. The Central Point Scenic Fire Station is the current station responding to Gold Hill, which is 8 miles and has a 12 to 15 minute response time. How does a 12 to 15 minute response time, a 911 call to arrival on scene, impact a structure fire, brush or wildland fire, or a medical emergency for Gold Hill residents?
So the response time is a critical element, and I acknowledge the quicker we can get there with an effective response force. And what an effective response force is, I mean, it's the right number of people who can put the pump in gear, pull the hose lines, put water on it. We're mandated by federal rules. You gotta have 4 on scene before we can actually crawl in and put water inside the structure. So much of the tactics are defensive or applying water from the outside. converting the atmosphere and then moving into a more safe environment.
Next couple of questions are about the ISO.
Okay.
You explained that an ISO rating of 3 is what you have throughout the district, with us being within 8 miles of the station, I think you described. Is it under 8 or at 8? Because the scenic is at 8 miles.
Yeah, 6. So the suburban 2 reference is the 6 miles.
So how does Gold Hill have an ISO of 3 if we're 8 miles from the scenic?
So they take, the ISO rating is a very complex matrix. And they plug in all of our experience and our response time. They come out and do evaluation. There's 3 elements that are evaluated. It's the community, that's the water system, and I'll say your water system ranked very high in our ISO rating. The dispatch center, and then the response, and it's the effective firefighting force. And it's not just the first unit that arrives on scene, it's a totality of force that arrives on scene. First unit, second unit, third unit, fourth unit.
How often is the rating determined, and when was it last determined?
So it was last determined 1 year ago, November of 2022. We just did a submittal. So the rating comes and gives us some feedback in some areas that we validate, make sure that our documentation with the hope that we can achieve a higher rating. Our rating was right there on the cusp of a 2. And so we submitted additional documentation. We can hear back from that, but it's about a 10-year cycle.
Is the ISO rating that was determined last year, has that gone up or stayed the same since when we had staffing levels at the station?
So our score actually improved. We were at 3 last time, and it was right in the middle of the scores at 70 rank in there, and we were about a 74 now, 78. So we've improved our score over time, but just not to the threshold of a 2.
So that's the overall district. As Gold Hill's gone up or down?
So Gold Hill is represented by the entire state.
Little different direction for a minute here. Isn't it true that the city of Gold Hill is rated at a 95% fire risk from the state assessment, making it one of the highest fire risks in Oregon?
I'd have to defer the wildfire risk to Division Chief Patterson.
And if any of it is something that you don't have today, if you can get back to us, that'd be great for us to get back to the council. And on that, is it true that Gold Hill's risks is one of the reasons why that Oregon State Fire Marshal grant for fuel mitigation came to their region to offset Gold Hill's risk?
Yeah, absolutely correct. Most of you are familiar with Ian and the work he's doing in your community and the mapping that took place. And it was really the result of his work at mapping and outreach that helped qualify those or totally important systems. Most of our district falls within the high to the straight pasture.
Okay. With the 12 to 15 minute fire and EMS response time greater, is this a satisfactory response for a city that has choke points at the north and the south end? And with the 1,500 people daily population, even higher residing and working in the area, more like an urban setting?
Yeah. So let's take the question 2 points, right? The choke points most definitely pose a risk within this community. And we've been active with ODOT and encouraging them to widen that bridge, provide us a little bit of relief because we've got incursions on the bridge as well. And we know that they have struggles with their snow plows and most oversized vehicles. So we've been advocating for some changes there. When it comes to the response times, I will admit, I wish that they were quicker, and we will continue to work towards placing the students and volunteers into that location to reduce us. But with ODF in the summer, if we consider the roving response forces that we put in at the peak of our fire season, the north end is what we call it of our community, the Sams Valley Patrol and Storm.
Is there concern that those choke points would be a risk or an issue if something like an Alameda fire were to hit Gold Hill with a 12 to 15-minute response time?
I think that regardless of the community, quick notification, quick recognition of the hazard, and quick notification of the community, regardless of the pathways in or out of the community, it's going to create a challenge.
One question that has been presented to council members that wanted to be asked was, how does the impact of the lack of timely response from where it's been in the past to now, but the citizens pay the same rate as those in the rest of the district that have a faster response time? How do we justify that cost?
So what I'm hearing is the comparison to what maybe the residents in Central Point are receiving for response time for the same rate that they're paying, correct? So right now, it takes about $1.7 million to staff a fire station. And in the models and where our demand is, the peak demand, our facilities are placed where the greatest demand is. And the response times, risk is a component of that. The residents of Gold Hill is the total value of buying into the service of Fire District 3. The apparatus that's out there, the mutual aid, we get 4 engines out to this community. Not in a 6-minute window that maybe Central Point appreciates, but within that 15 to 20-minute window.
And the impact on house fire for the spread to wildland in that case with that level of response?
Yeah.
Is there any effort to try to specifically recruit for these areas to save that from that?
Absolutely. That's it. We have a full-time volunteer recruitment coordinator that is just in the streets trying to bring in as many volunteers and community members to build resilience with them. We said, we're working with RCC to advance the first and second year homework. We did the first set. So we can our volunteer stations.
Chief, there's been a question about how the district is continuing to expand support services, but not necessarily ensuring that the primary task of emergency response is being staffed. Can you address that for us?
So when I hear support services, that's some of the risk reduction efforts or specifically the community care or what?
Probably any of the areas that are not specifically to emergency response. Yeah.
So really under previous leadership and our board, there's been a strong commitment to building resilience within the community. We want the communities to be less dependent on the 911 system and build resiliency and overall we're just a safer community. So we have transitioned some of our effort over to building that resiliency into the community. We've added 2 additional staff. We have grants that are sitting unaccomplished. So we're building out programs to help really meet the obligation of these different grants. And maybe that's part of the support services that you speak to, but we continue to build. We just added 3 additional positions to help with our succession plan, but also build some capacity within our response system. We don't have enough personnel to redistribute to staff until with 9.
Earlier, you presented that Gold Hill falls under the suburban zone 2, with only 500 to 100 people per square mile, but the city limits is essentially a square mile and there's close to 1,500 people in there. How often is that density determined?
So The density is established within the standards of cover review, and we have a standards of cover review that's scheduled for 2020. So that's coming up. There isn't a prescriptive review period, but we've identified that we need to take a look at the impact that community care is doing and our summer staffing and factor that into our stages.
And if Goldville meets a standard that is not suburban zone 2, but the level up, does that mean that there needs to be a faster response time or an increase in station staffing to meet that requirement?
That's most definitely part of the equation. So we will take into consideration our current experience, calling for the area and look at redeployment. About 15 years ago, we did a similar study and analysis, and we redeployed some of our personnel across the district to better address where we're seeing spikes.
And you mentioned that I-5 is a call location for you, but we find in Goldville that we're also a nexus of access to Central Oregon with Highway 234 coming right through the middle of town and that access to people back to I-5. Is there any consideration for that our station not being staffed also impacts the needs of the area surrounding us, as well as that primary response area, as well as the increase of traffic that goes through our community on a daily basis as they're accessing other parts of the state?
Well, we try and be available and ready to support all the commuters throughout our district. The obligation on the main transportation routes is a strong factor in how we deploy resources. The volume, if we did just the car volume and the hazardous materials that go up and down the 5, if we just solely evaluated that, we would be employing more expensive resources just in case there was an incident. I spoke to the White City Industrial Park, being a special hazard. There's a lot of stuff that goes through that community. It would be cost prohibitive for us to prepare for every emergency or event. That environment we might experience. But we do spend a lot of time developing what's called a LEPC, it's a local planning committee, so those vendors lean on each other, reduce the risk, build the resilience and response capacity, so our communities don't carry that financial burden.
And the last question that we had is, are you satisfied that Goldville has adequate fire and emergency response services?
What we're experiencing, just for call line, you guys are comparative to other communities of your size. I will say, I wish that we had more resident volunteers out there, and we continue to strive to put those in there to reduce the response times that the community experiences.
For saving a house, if there is a house fire, do we have adequate response?
Adequate response, yes, you are getting your 4 engines. Arguably, this one, I would prefer it was faster.
I'll pass it back to you, Mayor, if there's other council questions.
Okay, councils?
I do. First, thanks for coming out and talking to us.
Yes.
Also, we do appreciate what you do and what all of your staff does. If you've been around since 1991, you might remember back in 2002, when there was an arsonist that came down Highway 234 and started having prison fires. My house was one of those that almost burned.
Sure, I love that.
Yeah, and you guys saved our house. We are deeply appreciative with that. So that's not, it's not, we are appreciative of what y'all do. My question has to do with this map. Who determines these boundaries?
So the fire management zones is a function of, it's a mapping component. What we do is take average road speeds, congestion, we try and use some crowdsourcing, busy times, and then it's distances from each station. So road surfaces, roads, posted speed limits, and some crowdsourcing congested.
And so so this is the whole of Fire District 3.
Correct.
And over here, so where this little nub right here sits out here on the way on the western edge. What is beyond there? What covers that?
Road.
Oh, so So who determined that Gold Hill would be in Fire District 3, not Royal River?
So the city of Gold Hill approached Fire District 3 back in the mid-90s and asked to annex it into the district.
Do you think there would be any advantage to the city to reverse that and go back into the Royal River District?
And so they've never been part of the Royal River District. The Gold Hill was
Used to be our,
their own volunteer fire station, and that's absolutely a choice. It is can Royal River provide and for every level of service, but the community does have that option.
what's your opinion on that?
I don't think that the community would receive a better service, but
Thank you.
they do have a lower tax rate.
You're closer than second point.
But yeah, so go ahead.
No, I was just gonna advise council, as much as possible, asking questions, but saving comments for future discussion.
Thank you. I have a question about emergency flights. Now, you say that you don't have your own emergency services that man that station. Doesn't emergency flight, don't they have a policy out there? I know my mom lives with me, she pays like $80 a year. Is that what emergency flight does?
So Mercy Flights has a subscription. You can be a subscriber to their service, and it helps offset the gap between your personal insurance. Mercy Flights says that they have a fixed facility at the airport, sort of the base operations, but they're fairly fluid. And when a call's tapped out, they'll send a resource if it's available. We're experiencing wait times, not uncommon, 30 to 60 minutes. We're held on the scene.
No, how many fire stations do you guys have?
8.
You have 8?
Yep.
And you have,
4 career and 4 volunteer.
fire stations,
Yeah.
and you have 73 employees?
Correct.
So, just out of curiosity, how come we don't have that of those here?
Yeah, so the 73 is in its entirety, and that's part of our community care program as a special district. We have all of the services, the HR, the IT, the finance, we have to in-house. We have 51 responders, and they're broken up across 3 different battalions. And when you factor in obligated leaves, sick leaves, and vacation, and the holiday leave, we have 13 people on duty for that.
Are there any financial incentives for people who are interested in becoming firefighters?
No, and it's a great question. I tried to work at the state level to incentivize and offset. About 15 years ago, IRS identified any stipend. We used to provide volunteers a reimbursement for a stipend. And IRS recognized that as compensable. So all of them had to be treated as employees. About the same time, PERS weighed in and said that any volunteer contributing more than X number of hours has to go into the pension program as well. So it made all agencies reevaluate the reimbursement program for volunteers, and unfortunately it had a significant impact on.
So you have a class coming up scheduled next year?
So in January, we host the Rogan Agency Training Association, where we have about 25 volunteers from around the region. That's just in Jackson County. And our volunteer program isn't just combat firefighters. We have a strong contingent. Our dump trailers are being moved around by some retired members who come in and move the dump trailer, the chippers. There's a lot of different functions. Some of our volunteers, as they age out, they transition over to just hauling water. But about 5 of them.
Chief, may I ask another one that came up? What's the impact on response to Gold Hill if the scenic station is not staffed, if they're out on another call? Where's the help coming from?
So our central point location, just down the street on the front, or out of the river.
Under mutual aid?
Yeah, we have a very robust, what we call this a no quarters. So We believe that community doesn't care what color the fire engine becomes, they just want them to show up. And as simple as that concept seems, that's an advancement we've been able to make in the last 6 years is between us, Medford, and really down to that. You call, something's coming.
And you have the fire mapping zones, in our purple zone, are we the only station in that zone, or is the Sands Valley in this zone as well?
You are naming stations. Each color represents the management zone for one of our stations.
Okay,
So
so
the
you have a
orange one-
station and each zone has its own station.
Correct. The orange zone is the Sam's Valley station.
In our station, have you looked at the cost of taxes collected in our zone? I know I asked you about the city of Mobile, but since our station deals with the whole zone, what's the amount collected in that zone?
I don't have that number. Not all of them work with our data finance to see if they can parse that out.
When you're talking about the RCC students now, when you go to our end, when you say like the second year or so, are they qualified to operate the vehicles?
They are. They are. And, you know, there's a couple of elements of it. So it takes us about 2 weeks to teach someone to drive a pickup with the pump mounted on the back with the big engine to safely operate it and to really protect the community and safe operation as well. It takes about 3 months. It'd be quicker if we can just focus 8 hours a day on weekends, but to really develop the proficiency. The EMS, the EMT course is 6 months, and then we go to a state mandated licensure test. So, you know, the current program, when we can bring them in the door to when their response ready, is 6 to 12 months.
Do you pay the tuition for the students that are in your program?
Yeah, we do.
So that's the incentive.
Okay, so
That's
you're a trainer.
Yeah, yeah, I was focusing on the community.
Okay, no, I meant to train somebody.
Yeah. So it's a wonderful program. So we host 9 students every year. But we haven't been able to recruit them.
Wow.
Instead of vacancies. If you come in as a student, your first year, we pay your first year college education. Your second year, there's added value because now you're trained and they can move fast. Our student program will allow individuals to come in, get their firefighter certification, get their paramedic license, and be fully employable at no cost to them. It takes about.
Paramedic is the same as EMT, is that right?
Yeah, correct. It's
I have to get
high
there.
You gotta get there EMT first, and then it's like off ramps. You get to choose, do I want to go and just be an EMT firefighter, or do I want to get my paramedic license? Which is a full year of very arduous career.
And you pay for that too, paramedic.
As well.
Chief, I want to go back to the map real fast, having to do with where Gold Hill is. Are we the only station that's not staffed out of all these sections?
No, you're not. So the yellow, I call it the magenta north of Vineyard. And orange, those are the volunteer location.
Any other questions?
Then can we run out the fire station and make a few extra bucks to compensate for what we have to do?
So we've looked at some of our different partnerships. We, like Jackson County Sheriff's Office, they have access to that station for their deputies that are out here. They got stopping these facilities. ODF, we find it's in our best interest not to charge them to use the space. They bring a lot of iron and resources to the firefight that we truly can't afford. They're bringing the dozers and they're bringing the aircraft and any cooperative agreements and placing them in our community is just to our benefit. So we continue to look at partnerships. That is goal number 5 of our strategic plan is to continue to optimize and research. Really, it's non-traditional partnerships. Where can we build value in some of our community,
Such as Mercy Flights, for instance, is that a possibility?
So probably, I'd like to say yes, but Mercy Flights is so dynamic. They don't base out of fixed facilities
Right.
like the fire service does. Fire service is very unique. We anchored into one location, law enforcement and ambulance services. They invest in, we enroll, right? And, most times it doesn't matter if I have a career station or a volunteer station, law enforcement, oftentimes will be us to the incidents. You can enroll. Yeah.
So you mentioned 4 engines,
Yeah.
right? Are there 4 engines in that station?
No.
Are there any?
Yes. There's 2.
2? And they're there all the time?
All
They
the
just
time.
need people there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So we have, one, I call it the city pumper. That's what the people are accustomed to seeing in the city environment. And we have wildland engine, more maneuverable, purpose built.
Any more questions?
When can we expect to see at least like the one per shift volunteer, excuse me, the system that was in place a while back?
Yeah, so we have strong commitment from RCC, and this is our vision of what we want as well. We want that program to reemerge. We want to see greater numbers applying. Part of the challenge with our students, and we had 2 students graduate to the 2nd year program this past summer, Climate Falls High. So they went off, you can't blame them, they took a career job, right? We have 1 more student that we're hiring to backfill as well, so. I'd like to say, if all goes well, yeah, we just graduated 22 people out of the RCC program. 4 of those were EMTs, so they're ready to hit the road. They can learn to drive. That's regionally, that's not just Fire District 3. But we can start plugging some of our resources.
Is there any outreach the district is doing to the high schools? I mean, most kids are 18, 19 before they're graduating anymore.
Yeah, so the Fire District 3, we partnered with Workforce Oregon here a couple of years ago. And you might have also seen Northwest Youth Corps, and we put them up in the station. They did a lot of really good work, cleaning up around hydrants and just in our rural community. We have a workforce program with Crater, and we house, Eagle Point has a little different program, but we sponsor their senior projects. So they come in and be part of it. We're in the process of, I mentioned that the grant funds that are out there, we have a couple of shovel-ready projects we're not receiving bids on. So we're going to introduce the workforce, reimagine the intake point for members into the organization. A barrier to the program is that with the student program not providing a living wage, you have to have a place to live. And so many of our students are living at home still, and it doesn't foster a career transition. And we're trying to build that program in under Chief Patterson's leadership. We'll have some fuels crew with our patch where we'll be providing them a wage and sending them to night school.
I know a station where be housed.
What's the capacity of the station manpower wise?
Right down here. So it's 88 compliant minus the elevator, and we can house 4 people at a time. Northwest Youth Corps, we were putting 8 to 10 in there, just with a different system.
Is there an outreach program that goes outside the district to try and pluck new recruits from other communities?
Yeah, so there is, and unfortunately, yeah, that's the sensitivity, right? So the Fire District 3 is relatively a destination part. Want to come into Fire District 3. So we do see a number of volunteers that move. Our challenge is as soon as communities, Shady Cove is a good example, Lake Creek is another example of us leaning that way. We don't provide service for those communities, but as soon as their volunteers come and join our ranks, it creates a vacuum in those communities. And when they need help, we send additional resources and exhaust our white seating areas. And then we just got one that applied out of the Evansville community.
Yeah, I see Lake Creek when I drive through there, it's staffed with volunteers.
Yeah, most of the time, that's a community of six volunteers.
Well, we need to put the word out then.
Maybe we host a volunteer drive.
But and that's it. I think that a lot of people think that they have to put suit up and crawl in the buildings. And really, the industry needs to go away from that, you know, even for our current members. It's a kind of an unsafe practice. And when you consider the long-term health effects of those environments, cancer is a 100 times more prevalent for some of those environments. So we just volunteers. Yeah, they can be, you must volunteer. It can be a tender opportunity.
Well, I'm not shocked because, I have associates, a lot of them that are, first responders, police officers, military suffering the same thing. Retention is not there anymore. We're just having a hard time finding people that are wanting to do that type of hazardous work. And so I go out to you, however, it doesn't solve the problem.
I acknowledge that. I appreciate this opportunity. You have my pledge to this community that we value the service that we provide. We will continue to strive to build the capacity.
So if you come up with a plan and that we can help, let us know.
Absolutely.
You
I
know,
think that there's,
I don't want this is just an information gathering. And what we need to know is what we can do on our part to help also.
absolutely.
We can also schedule another meeting if we need to have you come back.
Exactly.
That'd be great. So we are a special district, and that means that we're exempt from some funding, but the city's not. And there may be opportunities that a city of your size can harness. Benefit all.
I like the sound of that.
Willie, anything else you have?
I think at this time, no, council, we can come back and circle back for conversation later if we need to have another public meeting, that the public would be welcome to give comment at that time. I would recommend at this time, any of the citizens that have any questions that you'd like to reach out to your council member or mayor or city hall, and you can get those to us and we can further perpetuate conversation and try to get some more questions answered. A couple of the questions that we didn't have answers for, if you guys would be willing to circle back and email, and I will get those out.
I want to make sure I leave my thoughts. I have a couple sketches here, so.
Well, thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm going to say this meeting is adjourned.